India, they said. It's going to be the biggest thing in the new Asia. And the city you should see first, they said, is going to be the biggest thing in the new India. They said, this place is hot. They were right about that. The temperature was outdone only by the humidity, but the locals didn't seem to notice. They were too busy. Bombay is India's boom town. It's official. Since the Indian economy was deregulated in 1991, free enterprise capitalism has unleashed the energy of India's entrepreneurs, and nowhere more so than in Bombay, which has the most know-how, the most oomph, the most everything. There are 12 million people in the city, and more arriving every day. On my first walk, I got the impression that the whole population was out there on the street, proving to me that they could take the heat without sweating. Some of the entrepreneurs were in action right there on the pavement. The open-air ear cleaners were probing orifices with that extra vigor small businessmen acquire when they know they're going to be allowed to keep the profits. There was a time when they would have had to pay tax on the wax. The pavement dentist is also showing the benefits of the economic boom. More people want their smiles improved. The pavement dentist replaces missing teeth with teeth that used to belong to other people. With the aid of his receptionist, he can give you a full upper and lower set, filed to fit. You end up smiling somebody else's smile, but you can't deny that he's identified a gap in the market. Under the old economic system, the dentist would have had to pay off 8 different officials just to stay in business. Now he has to pay off only 4 different officials. He has to pay them twice as much, but he saves on paperwork. Less paperwork, more bridge work. As Bombay roars forward to a big future, the street corner astrologers are doing well too, because everyone with a piece of the action wants to find out what happens next. The top astrologer in town had a low-rent reception area, but there was nothing skimped about the way he took my particulars.
What is your name?
Clive James. James.
Date of birth?
7th of October.
7, 10, 19?
39.
39. Time? Time, morning, evening, afternoon?
Oh, evening.
Evening. What clock?
Midnight. Armed with my vital statistics, he consulted a set of astrologers' log tables and was able to predict my past with more accuracy than I could.
85. This problem.
1985.
85.
I can't think of one. Any
Insult.
insult?
Yeah. And court.
He was right. I had been insulted in 1985. A television critic had said that my eyes were too close together. But television critics had insulted me every other year as well, so it scarcely counted as clairvoyance.
Correct?
That's right.
Next,
Next, he consulted my king line and daringly deduced that I was not going to be the next king of England. His predictions were getting closer to home.
Paralysis and heart.
Paralysis in heart.
Heart.
When?
2 trouble.
When?
1996.
1996. I'm going to have heart trouble.
Heart trouble and paralysis.
I think I'm having it now. Yeah. He predicted that in view of my weight problem, I would be ironed out by a heart attack in 1996. Since I weighed 50 pounds more than he did and was sweating all over his boutique, I couldn't give him any prizes for soothsaying. I was ready to have a heart attack any time he cared to name. By now it was high noon, and I was having daydreams about air conditioning.
Stay. I'll drive to you.
I hailed a taxi in the mistaken belief that the air would be cool inside it.
Okay.
An oven would have been cooler. An oven would have been faster. The taxi had a starter motor, but it wasn't connected to the engine. The driver relied on the passenger. This was free enterprise at its most ruthless, its most fiercely competitive. My driver was the only man I had so far seen sweating in Bombay besides myself. Given a fair chance, he was going all the way. Unfortunately, Bombay also has plenty of people who aren't going anywhere. At the traffic lights, they started to show up. In the West, when somebody begs from you, you can look right through him if you don't mind occasionally catching a reflection of yourself. The average Bombay beggar is harder to wish away. Officially, begging is not a problem because it doesn't exist. But the beggars are always there, right up against your window, like a conscience in a bottle. In Bombay, you can get rich enough to ride in a big car, but no amount of money can change the view.
Hello, sir.
When the taxi fell apart, I was back on the street. The only sure way to close your eyes to the harsh facts is to open them somewhere else, preferably in the dark. In audience terms, India has the biggest film industry on earth, and most of the Indian movies are made in Bombay, otherwise known as Bollywood. Absolutely everyone goes to the movies, from the rich all the way down to the people who have no other roof over their heads except this. Once you get inside, you can soon see the big attraction that Bollywood movies offer: escape. You can escape from harsh life. You can escape from your fellow man. You can escape from everything except the sheer nonsense going on up there on the screen. Everyone in a Bollywood movie either sings, dances, or sings and dances. The hero and the heroine are not allowed to kiss, but they are allowed to sing and dance. In fact, they are rarely allowed not to. The only suspense is whether the hero's hairstyle will hold up under the strain. Anil Kapoor's hairstyle is famous for the punishment it can take. The choreography tries but fails to unhinge his quiff. For the audience, it's a dream of power, of individuality, of doing it all on your own. Back outside in the hot light, people of Bombay are never on their own for a moment. Victoria Terminus is where a lot of Bombay's new citizens arrive. The building dates back to the Raj. The students of imperial architecture, it's a masterpiece, powerfully evoking the time when the rulers of the old India brought South Kensington with them. The Sahibs are long gone, so when someone who looks like a low-budget Sahib arrives in the station concourse, he can count on plenty of attention. As I tried out the fortune-telling weighing machine, I drew a crowd keen to see whether it would collapse under the strain. They were doomed to disappointment. The card said, "You have lost 7 pounds of sweat since you arrived, but watch out for a heart attack in 1996. In the station's great days, great trains took great people great distances. The greatest people were the white nabobs of the Raj, but the occasional Indian could afford a seat if he ranked as a Maharaja or above. Everybody else had to travel outside the train hanging on. Now they look as if they're doing that even if they travel inside, but at least they're all Indians. Some of the carriages are reserved for women, which gives you the idea that Bombay's male commuters can't be trusted in a crowded compartment. The rush hour trains are so crowded that gangs of children earn a living just picking up their litter from the tracks and selling it. Luckily, it was the slack part of the day, so there was room for me to get in through the door. I didn't have to cling on to the outside of one of the scrums that form around the doors during the rush hour, shedding people at each stop and often in between. The passing air cooled the carriage to less than 100 degrees Fahrenheit, so I was at my most suave when I finally arrived at Film City. Film City was dominated by the set for an epic movie called Raj Kumar. The set was made of plywood and plaster of Paris, and exterior shooting had to be completed before the next monsoon washed the whole thing away. From their plots, you might think that Bollywood movies are made only in the sense that a couple of colliding cars make sculpture. But this one showed signs of being assembled with some care. Actual rehearsals were taking place.
You're the director?
The director, Pankaj Parasha, looked like a pretty together sort of bloke.
Look around? Yeah, sure. Don't get in the way. Look out. Can I stay back here? Yeah, sure. Stay out.
The star of the movie was the famous Madhuri. She was about to shoot a crucial scene in which she would react to her first sight of the male lead's hairstyle. I stood unobtrusively out of the way. I didn't want to blow a take because we professionals know that time means money.
Excuse me, sir. Please come this side. Thanks. Here you can come, please. Thank you. Up your door. 1, 2, 3. Ready? Okay? Okay?
Everybody went on standby while Madhuri prepared for her next sequence. The busiest person on the set was the combined choreographer and dancing mistress, who demonstrated the routine one step at a time. Madhuri cranked up the grand passion and copied what the dancing mistress had shown her, while a powerful electric fan tousled her abundant hair and the waiting extras. I was well aware how privileged I was to be so close to Madhuri, because 350 million people would be watching the finished routine in the cinema, and most of the male Madhuri fans would be throwing coins at the screen in a vain attempt to attract the kind of attention that I was getting from her just by barging in. For the last shot, Madhuri drew deep on her reserve tank of ecstatic abandon. And that was the end of the day. Everyone had kindly forgotten how I had screwed up a take, so I was allowed to talk to the star.
You do little piece by little piece like that?
We don't do it in one go.
And the teacher teaches...
Yes, she teaches me the steps what I'm supposed to do, and then I do.
And you put it together and...
Yeah.
It's wonderful. I'm very impressed. Maybe I can do that.
Oh, sure. Why don't you come tomorrow? We can try it.
She thought she was joking, but I was beginning to have an idea. The fantasy world of Bombay movies was looking more attractive the more I saw of Bombay's reality. The film company kindly provided me with a limousine, but the road back to town was an eye-opener. This wasn't the kind of poverty you get after a natural disaster, with children starving to death. For the poor in Bombay, there is always something to eat if they look hard enough. It's just that they don't have time to do anything else. This is poverty as a way of life. It's career poverty. And the richer Bombay gets, the more poor people come in from the country to seize their chance of earning at least something. Theoretically, the new wealth at the top will trickle down. The official story is that it's already trickling. But you can't help feeling that it could trickle a bit harder yet. Nobody out here is in any danger of drowning in affluence. Only a few miles away from Film City, Juhu Beach is where the stars live, cooled by the spray of waves and the sea breeze, high up in apartment blocks with their windows open towards the west. The famous actress Shabana Azmi spends a lot of time helping the poor, so you can't blame her for spending some of her time in more pleasant surroundings.
To me, I think India, and particularly Bombay, is about people living simultaneously in several centuries. So you have people living back to back from the 17th to the 21st century. And you can see a bit of Bombay and feel, my God, we are into medieval times, and then suddenly get into this very swanky office and you get into this fabulous residence and you see that somebody's using the microwave while somebody's just making do with twigs right there on the pavement and making his own fire and cooking his food. So I think it's people at any given time and place encapsulate all the differences that arise out of these contradictions. And that's what Bombay, and that in fact is what India is all about.
Why do people keep coming to Bombay?
Because there's nothing for them in the villages where they live. And they come not in search of housing, they come in search of employment.
Can they all make a living here?
Anybody can make a living in Bombay. If you have energy, if you have drive, and if you have enterprise, anybody can make a living. There is this man who just occupies a little place on a pavement right outside a big jeweler shop. And all he's got is a little tin box in which he has his weapons, his implements, whatever you'll call it. And he strings beads and makes little earrings. I go to him every now and then, and I am amazed how his entire paraphernalia is contained in that one little tin box, and he is doing well, and he's managing to send money back home to the people who are part of his family. And that, to me, constantly, every time I see that man, I feel, wow, this is what Bombay is all about, you know. There is opportunity for all, and they will keep coming here.
Could you live anywhere else here?
Nowhere else in the world. Nowhere else. I bitch, I moan, I grumble, I scream when I get caught in this traffic, when I'm faced with the pollution. I want to scream and bitch and moan. And yet you take me out of Bombay for 10 days and I'm gasping for the pollution. I'm gasping for the traffic, and I'm gasping for the noise. And I say, please, I don't want this sanitized, wonderful, beautiful air. I just wish to get back to my city.
If Shabana has a soft spot for Bombay's pollution, she isn't necessarily being soft in the head. Bombay is polluted because Bombay works. Even the garbage is someone's stock in trade. That trash the poor live in is picked over constantly for negotiable junk. Everything organic rots, but everything inorganic is recycled. The city is one huge recycling plant. It folds back into itself. It lives off itself. The only problem is that too many people are in on the act. Not all the new people in Bombay come in from the country. Weddings are big business, and marriages produce children. At roadside wedding parlors, the ceremonies last 2 days each. When I wandered into one by accident, I thought it was a festival. A girl who would soon be of marriageable age herself told me that the groom's party would think I knew the bride, and the bride's party would think I knew the groom. So all I had to do was stay cool, the hardest thing to do in Bombay. The groom arrived looking stunned. Many Indian marriages are arranged, and he looked as if his marriage had been arranged under anesthetic. Luckily, he had a couple of brothers to hold him up. The groom's party slow marched into the pavilion where the senior female relatives of the bride had accumulated to check him out. The bride looked overcome with joy. The groom looked as if he had never met her before in his life. Maybe he was just nerving himself up for the big challenge, which for an overwhelming number of Indian men is still to generate an overwhelming number of male children. The festivities were fun, but what's going to happen to all those children? That was the question that kept on nagging, even as I was carried away by the glittering tinsel, the generous warmth, the cheerful determination to take the visitor by the hand and shake the last drops of sweat out of him. And even if the people who are getting richer see the point of having fewer children, will the poor ever get the same idea? All they want is more boys. Girls are still thought of as an unfortunate byproduct, and a lot of them count themselves lucky if they attain the rank of child prostitute. There'll be no pretty weddings for these young ladies. A cynic might say that prostitution at least gives them some kind of home to go to. Thousands of children just wander the streets with no one to look after them, or nearly no one. The city doesn't officially do anything for them, but throw the boys in jail when they're caught stealing. But there is a Christian mission that tries to help. It's called the Pavement Club, and it's run by the admirable Lawrence Harding, known as Mr. Lawrence by the street children to whom he and his wife spend their lives giving the ghost of a chance. The street children are allowed to come to the Pavement Club once a week. Mr. Lawrence works on the principle that if he doesn't catch the children before the age of 12, they'll be goners. Unless they can be convinced early that a clean nose pays, the boys are headed for a life of vagrancy, crime, and no hope. As for the girls, unless they can be talked out of it, they're heading for a brief career of cashing in on their bodies, but they won't be keeping much of the cash. There are men waiting to protect them in all the worst ways. Inside the church hall, the school is run by Mrs. Lawrence, whose teaching equipment consists mainly of a blackboard and a few slates. Not even the brightest pupils are going to make up in a few scattered hours what the children of the well-off take years to learn. The street children even have to be taught how to play in the only fairground they will ever be able to afford, because it's free. Mr. Lawrence stages a compulsory cheering session meant to help them let off steam. It's a tribute to the energy of the street children that they have any steam to let off. The climax of the day is the only square meal most children will eat all week. Every other day, they'll take what they can get from the garbage bins outside the restaurants and tourist hotels. This is their day off from real life. Back outside, real life starts again. Around the triumphal gateway of India, that used to be the first thing Western visitors to Bombay saw when they sailed in, you can see what the real life of the street children looks like. At its best, it looks wild, free, and kind of cute, like the life you would have chosen for yourself if they'd let you out of school. But what if they'd never let you in? Mahendra Shinde is a street child who made it. Today he works for the Salvation Army and has somewhere better to sleep than the toilet roof he used to call home. But he's 1 in 100, and the next generation of young hustlers are still pulling all the same tricks that he used to. How about mineral water that the children are selling at Victoria Station? Is it genuine?
No, they refill it that. They don't care if it's washed or not washed. Straight from the bottle from garbage bin, they fill with the tap water and lid put on and go near the long distance train. Hello, mineral water, mineral water.
Didn't the police try to move you on?
Oh yeah, They treat very badly. Sometimes they come with the roundup. They chase us. They beat us with the sticks. Sometimes whips, and they put us in the van and take to the local jail.
Did you ever go to jail?
Oh, I've been 7-8 times in Dongri jail, where the children live there. About 500-600 children live there. They all treated very badly there.
At least in jail you get a bed and a meal and there's a roof over your head. Isn't that sort of paradise?
No, it's like a cage, like a parrot in the cage.
How did you move up from being a street child with nothing to a man with a good job?
I used to make shoe shine here, no? That time, one Englishman used to come here and used to shine his shoes. Not only me, but he had another shoe shine boys also. He used to give chance at the time at one boy to shine his shoes. So he used to give us 10 rupees at one polish. That time, maybe 10-12 years ago. And some of the boy, he put them in the school. And some boy, he managed to get them job.
So what about the boys you grew up with on the streets? What are they doing now?
Some of doing very well. Some of finishing with the drug. Most of them died also. Yeah, my very dear friends have died.
What kind of drugs?
You know heroin?
Heroin?
Yeah, because you can get here very cheap. About 50 rupees a gram. And you can get any corner of Bombay.
You're a remarkable man, Mahendra, but for most of the street children, they really haven't got a chance, have they?
Oh, they're really looking, dying to see the chance. They're trying to have one chance. But maybe one day they will have chance. And if they get chance, they immediately will change their life, I think.
Mahendra will get ahead in the new economy. He's exceptional. The new economy is for the exceptional. The stock exchange is jumping with mathematicians on the make. For those who can read, write and do deals, Bombay is in that exciting phase when fortunes are made every day and everyone is too frantically busy to sit down and figure out where the unexceptional fit in. But the old economy is still there on the other side of the next wall. And anyone working in it can only pray that privatization won't wipe out his job. Surely the washing machines are on their way. Until then, your laundry is still whacked out in the traditional manner. Suddenly I realized why my shirts were coming back from the laundry with that stone-washed look I hadn't seen since the 60s. Suddenly I realized why one of my shirts hadn't come back at all. It was still down there, having the sweat stains beaten out of it. Even with a couple of new movies to watch each week, being anything except rich would make life in Bombay too tough to contemplate if it wasn't for the open-air entertainment. Cricket came to India as the rich man's game, but the poor couldn't be kicked off the grass. At Azad Park on a Sunday, there are a dozen matches going on simultaneously at all times, and it isn't uncommon for a fielder to spend an enjoyable afternoon participating in 2 matches at once. Anyone is allowed to play. It was correctly assumed from my lithe physique that I was a visiting Australian fast bowler, and I didn't disappoint them. After touching up the ball with a nutmeg grater in the good old sporting way, I sent down a screamer. The guy who thought he had hit me for 6 was caught for a duck by silly mid-off 2 matches to the south. One of the nicest things about Bombay is that you don't have to be loaded to enjoy a day out. While the rich playboys roam the globe, ramming their powerboats into the wharf and crashing their private jets, everybody else goes down to Chapati Beach to see what's happening. It might not look like a lot, but it beats the average daytime television talk show. Shutting yourself away is unusual enough to rank as a special event. The general opinion in Bombay is that everyone's in it together, and no one can expect to be alone without being looked at. Religion is a form of entertainment too. Indian religions put on a show that anyone can enjoy. The ashram is a combination of music hall, holiday home, animal house, wax museum, and carnival. A guru expounding fine points of the ancient teachings might add an element of the lecture hall, but otherwise the general effect of a good day out is hard to beat. The friendly decor encourages exploration. The Swami in charge asked me whether I was a man of faith. I told him I was Church of England, and he said, never mind, but I should watch out for a heart attack in 1996. Then he took me around to tell me which god was which. Some of them looked fairly frightening, but not in a way to disturb your sleep. It was a sort of Disneyland diorama without all that tediously convincing technology. As if I wasn't sweating enough, they started lighting fires. Most of the priests are men because they have to do a lot of profound stuff. But women are allowed to ring the bells. There was something for everybody. I thought the feel-good factor was a bit subdued, but so was the fanaticism. Apart from the occasional riot in which Hindus and Muslims slay each other by the hundred, by Indian standards, Bombay has a good track record for religious coexistence. It's because there are no real oppressed minorities. There is just the deprived majority, the poor. I couldn't see many of them about, but I was assured that they would be allowed in if they turned up. Religion helps them to transcend the need for material goods. I myself have always found that the need for material goods is easier to transcend after you've got some, but no doubt I failed to open my mind to the ways of the East. Meanwhile, Bombay is still opening its mind to the ways of the West. Pierre Cardin unwrapped his first collection aimed at India. Despite the heat, I felt bound to put on a suit, because I had been warned that everybody would be dressing up, and indeed they had. But the women didn't have to dress up all that much, because Indian women of whatever income bracket wear saris all day, and they always look wonderful. One of the loveliest saris arrived draped on the fair form of India's leading popular novelist, Shobha Day. Worn without any accessories except a dangerous-looking husband, her outfit seemed unbeatable to me, and I wondered what Pierre could pit against it. The answer was hula hoops. I've been alive long enough to have participated in the hula hoop craze, and often wondered what happened to them all. Here was the answer. They all ended up in Paris. Pierre turned the hula hoops into snappy little export numbers for well-off Indian women who weren't having enough trouble climbing into their chauffeured limousines. Pierre had also designed some outfits for Indian men to express themselves in when their wives came home wearing hula hoops. I got the impression that the audience was having trouble stifling its skepticism, but the Bombay socialites are very polite people.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Pierre Cardin.
When Pierre appeared to take a bow, they showed their respect for his advanced years, instead of wrestling him to the floor and beating an explanation out of him for why he thought hula hoops could improve on a sari. I myself found it harder to forgive him, but I got one thing out of the evening. I got to meet Shobha Day.
There's a trickle-down effect in Bombay. Whatever happens in Bombay happens to the rest of India, maybe 5 years later. And it's the place which respects, worships success. And by success, I mean money, specifically. Bombay is a city that it doesn't matter which class you belong to, which caste you belong to. People in the rest of India, they're obsessed by things like that. This is a city where you make it. It's everybody's in the fast track. It isn't a place for losers at all.
Does the money trickle down? Is everyone going to get rich?
I hope it happens, but what really does happen in reality is that Bombay is seen like a big, juicy mango, a nice, ripe one, and people want to squeeze it and squeeze it for all it's worth. So you have this great influx of people coming here because this is the city of dreams. This is where they want to make it. It doesn't matter if you make it anywhere else in India. It just doesn't have the same magic, the same glamour. You got to make it in Bombay, and then people acknowledge that you made it in the rest of India.
I passed some poor people right outside your front door, and you must do that every day. How do you cope with that?
It's a tough question. I really don't know how to answer that without sounding very insensitive or deadened. In a way, I think poverty, when you encounter it every day of your life, and you've seen it from the day you've been born, it sounds horrible, but it anesthetizes you. Is that the right way to pronounce it?
That's the right word.
Yeah, okay. It kind of, you stop noticing it, you stop reacting it, and it makes you feel terrible at the end of the day, but you can't be on a permanent guilt trip. You do what you can. You don't have to necessarily talk about what you do for the poor, because I think that's very crass and very vulgar, but at the same time, you can't go into a sort of self-flagellation trip every day of your life. You learn to live with it eventually.
Tell me about the movie industry. I know Hindi movies are fantastically popular, and I've seen a few of them myself, but I find quite a lot of trouble understanding the rules. This is one rule. If I got it right, the lovers aren't allowed to kiss or even touch. Is that right?
Yes, but they can rape one another, and the girls are on top these days.
But how do they manage that?
That's okay. That's okay. Sort of very roughing each other up is okay. Very, very rude comments about each other's bodies, that's all right. But the minute it comes to kissing, then you cut to a bush that's shaking violently, or flames of passion somewhere in the distance, or you have two little birds going tweet, tweet and kissing in the bushes, or butterflies, that kind of thing. Because I guess kissing is really not seen as part of the Indian culture. Well, we have a great erotic tradition in literature, in poetry, in sculpture, but somewhere down the line, the Mughals came along and they killed our libido, and then came the British for 400 years with their Victorian Moors, and they did a very effective job of wiping out all that heritage.
So it's our fault, really.
Absolutely, it's all your fault.
Shobha Day had finally convinced me of what I had been suspecting for some time. In Bombay, anyone can do anything if they can just get a leg up first.
Okay, let's go.
For example, anyone can become a taxi driver, as long as he can find a taxi that works. Even if his taxi doesn't work, he can pretend that it does. I had got used by now to how the same taxi driver kept turning up. He was following me around, pushing his taxi as fast as I could walk. I respected his determination not to be defeated by mere lack of equipment. I myself have always wanted to be an actor, but have been unfairly held back by lack of talent. Bollywood movies could be my way in, so I went downtown to the Bombay equivalent of Central Casting. Initially, I had my usual trouble finding the address in the back alleys. But again, as usual, a few hundred small boys quickly gathered to help. One of the boys helped himself to my watch on the way in, and I didn't notice until later. Oh well, it was only a 24-karat gold limited edition Cartier original. I thought the guy on the door was the casting master, but he was only the guy on the door. The casting master was upstairs, working the phones. The temperature rose as I climbed. By the time I got up there, I had worked out an opening line to impress him.
He wants to meet you.
Did you ever meet Sir Richard Attenborough?
Yeah.
Yeah?
A lot of work.
Yeah?
So, more, you know, film Gandhi.
Gandhi, huh?
Yeah, they are here for 35 days shooting.
He made it clear that without his assistance, Sir Richard would have had to film Gandhi's funeral scene with 6 men and a pariah dog.
3,000, 6,000 every day.
All the actors were working.
All the junior artists were busy. So,
subtly, I got him to the point. Are you casting for the film with Maduri in it? Do you think there's any chance that I could get a part in that?
You?
Yeah. You know, it's sort of Some romantic part? No? I wondered if I was getting through, but finally he told me to go downstairs and wait with everybody else. I went down into the comparative cool of the tape-up pit, where the extras and bit players sit waiting for the call. Some of them have to wait a long time. Some of them strike up lasting friendships. Some of them haven't worked since Gandhi, the man, not the movie. An hour went by that felt like a year in a sauna, but finally the lucky names were read out.
Hello, just listen to me. The following persons have to reach Film City by morning 9 a.m. with suit. Anwar S, Rajan Varsava, Farid Varsava, Nirbhay, Ghani, Prakash Tripathi, Anand Rai, and Clive James.
Bombay actors are very generous, and none of them physically attacked me for winning a part they would have given back the eye teeth for that they got from the pavement dentist. They said various short Hindi words, which I presumed meant good luck. With my precious work chitty in my sweat-soaked pocket, I went back out to Film City in the familiar limousine. They were still making Madhuri's movie, and the first shift of extras were breaking for breakfast. Inside the soluble castle, the famous fighter ranger stunt director Ravi Dhawan was setting up for a big fight scene. Ravi was a busy man, but while I was waiting for my love scene with Madhuri, he very nicely agreed to fill me in on the Bollywood movie business. I persuaded him to take me to another part of the soluble castle, where it was quiet enough to talk about the downside of his profession. Is it dangerous being an Indian stuntman?
Very dangerous.
Yeah? Or
because we don't have safety like Hollywood people have. Don't have enough money to put take time and energy and then airbags. We don't have airbags to jump or some firefighting equipment.
just let me do this slowly. You jump without airbags? You fall with...
We jump without airbag, but we put some boxes.
What about you? You ever get hurt?
I got hurt when I broke through glasses because we don't have sugar glasses here.
They make you jump through real glass?
Yeah, we go through real glasses.
You done that?
Yeah, I've done. You can see the marks and scars.
Show me that.
Yeah.
You went through a real window?
Yeah, on my knees, on my stomach.
They pay you extra for that?
Yeah, they pay extra, but it's like not worth.
Is the sequence I'm in, is that an important part of the movie?
Yes, very important.
Oh, right.
It's a small sequence, but it's very important sequence.
Do I get a costume?
Yeah, I got something which will fit you properly. Anand, costume.
Down below, the word was out that a new acting sensation had been discovered. The transformation was dramatic. I was disappointed to discover that Madhuri hadn't yet arrived. I thought I was going to be playing a love scene with her, but it turned out that I was going to be in a fight scene with two heavies who handled their weapons as if they had been born with them.
Good. So, come, Clive. Are you ready?
Yeah, I guess so.
Ready? You rehearse with them once, and then we'll see.
Okay.
Yeah, ready?
You got to do it slowly?
Yeah, slowly. Yeah.
Very slowly.
Very.
I put in a request to rehearse as thoroughly as possible. It wasn't that I lacked agility, and no one has ever questioned my physical bravery. I was only afraid of getting cut by that sharp thing the other guy was holding.
I'll
do that. Having taken heed of Ravi's warning that Indian stuntmen not only look as if they are defying death, but actually are, I tried desperately hard to remember what I was told.
Push it back.
But remembering isn't easy when you're up against a medieval warrior in dark glasses.
Yeah, and pull you back. React to this. That's good.
Is that?
Yeah. Okay.
Action!
While my rehearsal continued, the male lead, none other than the famous Anil Kapoor, was setting up for a less crucial scene in another part of the castle. He was facing the problem of keeping his hairstyle intact under growing pressure from the plot.
Too fast!
My rehearsal was starting to speed up. Barely suppressed gasps from the other sword fighters indicated their awareness that their jobs were under threat from a prodigious new talent. Anil Kapoor's hairstyle was under threat from his disguise. How to make the most of both his hairstyle and the disguise covering it up was a problem it took an hour to solve.
Is this the real one?
Yeah. Taking! Ready? Are you ready? Ready! Action!
Finally, my fight scene was ready for a take. The camera rolled. I did everything right and died a death which I thought was marked by that understated authenticity otherwise so lacking in Bollywood movies.
Got it!
The other actors for a moment feared that I might really be dead.
Okay, get up.
How was that?
Okay, good.
You don't think it was too hammy towards the end?
No. Quiet.
Is that fake?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. Worthy opponent. Ravi said he had never seen anything like it. I got a lot of offers to star in Hollywood movies, but I had to say no. After 2 weeks of Bombay's trickle-down effect, my shoes had filled up with sweat so often the soles were peeling off, and I didn't have a shirt left that hadn't been smacked to a rag. Also, I had the first twinge of toothache in one of my remaining upper molars, and although there was at least one skilled dentist locally available, I preferred to have the trouble seen to somewhere else. It was time to say goodbye and good luck. I don't know whether Bombay will make it as a prosperous Western-style society with fair shares for all. I don't even know whether we've made it. When Gandhi was asked what he thought of Western civilization, he said he thought it would be a good idea. How much graceful poverty do we have amongst all our graceless wealth? But the days are gone when we could come sailing in from the west, take a look at the picturesque inhabitants, and say, stay as sweet as you are. They've had enough of being patted on the head. Now they want what we've got, and it's their turn. It couldn't happen to nicer people, and they might even manage to stay nice when it does.
Presentation of this program was made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by annual financial support from viewers like you.